Throughout my years in dealing with landlords in my area of practicing landlord-tenant law, there's some attributes that I have found that have made landlords successful and have made them able to scale and expand their portfolios in a way that maybe some other landlords haven't, or they've stayed small. And so to me, there's very defined characteristics of successful landlords. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a huge corporation, doesn't mean that you have to have, thousands upon thousands of units, but you definitely can be a successful landlord in your portfolio and grow your portfolio if you embody these 6 characteristics. And the first one right off the bat is strategic vision and planning. So as someone who wants to buy real estate, or maybe you already own real estate and you're looking to scale or to expand, one of the key things landlords or successful landlords do is they identify what kind of income property they want, and then they really study that. And they study the area they want to buy in. So I've seen landlords that only buy in the area that they live in. I'm in Los Angeles. A lot of my clients own predominantly in Los Angeles. And what I've seen is they do their research, and a lot of them either niche down and they go, hey, I'm just going to be multifamily, or they have some sort of plan that maybe they'll step into multifamily now, but then they'll expand it and they will buy like industrial later. And part of that strategic vision and planning is understanding how financing works. So many people get their starter income property usually through some sort of conventional loan where they can get maybe 4 or 5 units. They live in one and they rent out the others. That's a good way to start getting income property. Another way is maybe you have a business and you want to buy a building. There's loans, like the SBA 504 or the SBA 7A. But there's loans where you have maybe a smaller down payment, but you're able to step in to an industrial property or an office, or maybe even a mixed use, part residential, part office. So maybe you can live in one unit, have an office, and you're saving yourself money, but you're also having another unit or maybe some other spaces available to lease to offset the mortgage. Having a vision is important. In order for you to have a vision, you have to study the different kinds of real estate and figure out which one maybe is your bag. Maybe you're not into multifamily, maybe you're into industrial. Or maybe you really like the idea of multifamily, but there's different markets that you want to enter that are maybe less intimidating. Like Los Angeles multifamily is somewhat of an intimidating prospect because of the mass amounts of laws in favor of tenants that are ever evolving. So strategic vision and planning is the first characteristic or principle the good landlords have. The next thing they have is having, investment savvy. They understand how financing works, but they also understand the expenses of real estate. And they figure out ways to sort of mitigate or be smart about it. So ongoing expenses, maintenance is a big one. There's ongoing like utilities, things like that. They have the ability to understand and plan. Maybe, you can mitigate expenses through an upfront investment of like redoing the plumbing. Maybe there's major plumbing problems. If you do an upfront investment, like I'm just going to repipe the building, in the long term, maybe that will help you. But you have to have some sort of understanding of how financing works to be able to negotiate typically buying it or getting some sort of credit so that if there's any huge capital improvements or, things that need to be done, that maybe potentially you can get a credit to pull that off. But having just an understanding of the different ongoing costs for a building and what the building is producing. Like I've seen, cases where people have bought a property that didn't cash flow and they for some reason thought that it was going to cash flow and it never did. You need to understand how to read financials and read the financials that you get in due diligence and then be able to, again, come up with some sort of plan like this building is good, the rents are there, but maybe the maintenance is high. Why is the maintenance high? And figuring out ways to address that so that you can better cash flow a building. And then just understanding once you have an asset, how to plan long-term improvements for it just in general. You typically have to repair the roof. If you get vacancies, you might have to rehab. How do you rehab? How much is that going to cost? So they tend to be very savvy with finances and are very good at getting their cash flow down. And down in the sense up, like to get a building to cash flow. So if you're someone who's not great with numbers, you might want to pick up a book about, running an income property or figuring out what those finances are. But you have to be good at essentially balancing a budget. Next is effective communication. As much as I've seen lately, there's been some sort of tension, animosity. I think mostly regulatory, political changes have caused that. But you need to be able to effectively communicate with tenants and your vendors. As much as people might, like some people, I see people who hate their landlords, and I've seen landlords that are like not into their tenants. But you guys both need each other in reality, because landlords provide housing or provide, space for businesses to run, and tenants need that. But landlords need tenants. So you're not in the business of vacancies. So one thing that I see really successful landlords is they're really good at communicating with tenants, and they're very good at kind of diffusing situations. I did a whole video, hopefully I remember to link it, I'll try to link to the top, but I did a video about basically diffusing disputes with tenants. But they're very good at communicating. They're very good at once maybe a maintenance request comes in, they're good at addressing it, delegating it on time, and not only just communicating with tenants, but also communicating with vendors. It's like the same thing in life. If you're in a relationship, communication's key. If you're not hearing things, if you're not getting updates back, if you don't know what's going on, that's when tenants tend to get really angsty about things. So communication is a key thing. Also communicating with vendors, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and holding them accountable for their contracts and their bids. So communication is a huge part of it. Not only just following things through, but being able to diffuse things and trying to problem solve. Maybe something, maybe you have to give up as a landlord some sort of concession that you didn't want to, but it might keep the peace between you and the tenant. In long term, you might want this tenant there. You might, want to have that income ongoing. Another characteristic of very successful landlords, their ability to problem solve. So things are pretty much always evolving in real estate. It's an ongoing evolution. There's very basic principles. You rent a space, you collect money. But there's always unforeseen circumstances, major improvements, maybe some sort of change with the regulation, change in the demand for where your property is at. Sometimes, rents go up, rents go down, the demand changes. Maybe what you have isn't what people are looking for, so maybe you have to kind of retool or reconfigure your property to make it more palatable for the kind of tenant that's looking in that area that your building is at. So your ability to be able to problem solve and adapt to ongoing changes helps. That really is something that happens in multifamily, predominantly with amenities or with unit turnovers, being able to, if you get a vacancy, update the unit to make it, look nicer, look kind of more modern, newer, look more like, what other vacancies are that people want. And with, I see more in the industrial buildings, being able to change or configure maybe a space for rent, removing some things or adding some sort of amenities that make it more palatable for the type of business that's maybe renting in the area or looking. Problem solving, unforeseen circumstances, being able to adapt to market changes, and keeping on top of it. So just doing their research, getting the news, and understanding what's changing for what real estate they own. Another one is compliance and legal understanding. Again, this is all over, but laws are changing regarding real estate in general. There's different laws pertaining to residential real estate specifically all the time. LA, if you're a Los Angeles landlord, I don't need to tell you, there's constant changes. It's an overall tone probably of the administration that we're in now, but a general trend towards having a lot more tenant rights. So you as a landlord need to be really, really on top of knowing your rights as a landlord, but also knowing your tenants' rights and making sure that you're not violating them, probably on accident. But you have to have a really good understanding of the laws that are affecting you. And again, that has to do with keeping up with the news, maybe subscribing to some sort of newsletter, getting in with some sort of an association. If you have an apartment, there's apartment associations. If you have warehouses, there's commercial real estate associations. But keeping yourself informed, because things are always changing. And if you maybe inherited a property from your parents who are older, the landscape has drastically changed from when they probably bought that building, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And the last one is just an overall commitment to learning and improvement. Nothing is like, you might have it where like your thing's sailing, you have no vacancy, everyone's paying, and that's great. But there might just be a random vacancy. There might be a change to a law. There might be a zoning change. There might be all the different changes that could happen that affect your real estate. And so you have to be committed to an ongoing learning and just a fundamental understanding that things will change, that laws are going to change, that markets are going to change. And maybe, you retool, maybe you sell and trade, maybe you keep and expand. But you have to be committed to an ongoing process of learning. And you should always learn about different types of real estate. If you're really, really committed to multifamily, you should still learn about commercial real estate, because maybe an opportunity or a deal comes your way and you'll understand what that deal is, and you'll understand, what it would take of you to buy it and run it. Just know that nothing's going to be perfect. There's probably always going to be room for improvement, and that's okay. Real estate is, again, especially in America, one of the best ways to grow wealth. It's not as passive as it used to be. It can be, but really things are pretty much as passive as the systems you put in place for them. As far as what I've seen, these are characteristics that when I see landlords or I talk to landlords, I go, wow, you're very successful. That's what I see. Those are the things that they embody. And they have a really, really deep understanding of their real estate. They have a deep understanding of real estate in general, and they're always committed to learning. They're committed to, watching the market, watching trends. And another one, they keep themselves very organized. I also have a video about that as well, which hopefully I remember to also link that here. To be a successful landlord, it's totally doable. It's totally possible. And there's definitely more and more, I feel like, young people buying real estate and looking to have real estate as a means of additional income to grow their wealth. And so I don't want anyone to feel intimidated by it. Like, I've felt intimidated by real estate for years that I've, been dealing with it. But I do see that it's possible. And so I hope this is kind of like a motivational video, but also something that if you, in general, looking to buy real estate, these would be things that you could focus on yourself internally to make yourself better or well suited or ready to buy real estate or to grow your portfolio. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you might want to sign up for my newsletter. I send it every week. It's predominantly geared towards landlords, although sometimes it has just some general great insight and information. That being said, I thank you for watching this one, and I will see you in the next video.